Hello, good morning. My name is Ava Collopy. I am a writer and author of several books. How are you today? I have 3 questions for you today. What is the hardest thing about being a writer? What is the most rewarding thing about being a writer? And what advice would you give someone who's thinking about becoming a writer, but they don't think they have quite enough talent? What would you tell them?
Hi, Ava. Thanks for having me on the show. And I'm doing really well, thank you. I am located in downtown Portland, Oregon. This is my little workspace that I've created in my studio apartment where I currently live. And in terms of how many students I've taught in my workshops, that's really hard to say because I started the workshops to test out my writing through the body method when I first created it years ago. And I wanted to test it and see how it worked for people and see where I needed to make adjustments. So I was really focused on that. But as I've thought back over the number of workshops, I would say I've taught hundreds and hundreds of students in those workshops. And then I'm also an adjunct professor of writing, which I've done for a couple of decades, and I've taught thousands of students in that realm. And then in the last few years, I've started working with one-on-one clients. So that's my best guess about how many students I've taught and people I've helped with writing. It's been quite a number.
What is the most rewarding thing about being a writer?
Yes, I would love to talk about that. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So I am a big fan of story. It's my passion in life. I think story heals the world. And when we share our stories, we just create this reverberation, I feel, this ripple effect around us that extends to people we share our stories with, and then it extends beyond them. And so that's the short answer to why I do this. I do believe from research I've done and my own personal experience that stories heal us on all levels. And I mean that mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and even physically. Science has found that writing and storytelling and story sharing actually can heal our bodies. And it can create movements, right? When we share stories, we create movements, and that's how we create change. And so on a personal level, I will give you the very condensed version of this because it's I think it's quite fascinating. I'm still amazed by it. But many years ago when I started writing the first draft of my novel, Miranda's Garden, I experienced this, I guess the best way I can describe it is a dark night of the soul experience, and this wasn't immediate. The character Miranda came to me the way my characters usually do. She just kind of bubbled up in my consciousness, and when I started exploring who she was and what her story was about, I soon realized that she and I had created this alliance. And so it was almost like we had to tell her story with honesty and integrity. And she would show me how to navigate a very difficult time in my life that actually came about because I was writing her story. So writing her story led me to realizations about my own life that I had no clue about before. And it was very eye-opening, not easy, but definitely worth it. Very transformative, changed my life for the better forever. And so ever since then, I decided I wanted to find a way to help people tell stories in this very deep way that I did. And it has to do with deep character development. And so that's what writing through the body is all about.
And what advice would you give someone who's thinking about becoming a writer, but they don't think they have quite enough talent? What would you tell them?
So, yes, the most challenging thing I would say is being able to condense information enough so people don't feel overwhelmed by it, because I have this sort of fractal kind of brain that's always spinning out new ideas and looking at things more deeply and broadly and I get very excited about what I do and what I have to share. And so the challenging thing for me when I do workshops or teach anyone in any capacity is to really boil down what I'm wanting to teach into manageable pieces so that people don't feel overwhelmed. Because usually when people come to a writing workshop, that's what they're wanting help with is, can you give me a little piece of something that will simplify this for me, make it easier for me. So that's the challenging part for me. And I would say that the most rewarding part is when someone has a breakthrough or feels inspired, right? And, whether it's my college students or workshop participants or a private client, when someone has a breakthrough and can not only create the pages and get the words on the page, if they have some kind of personal breakthrough and some kind of realization about their own connection with the story they're telling, even if it's fiction, that is extremely, extremely rewarding to me. So you asked about books. This was very hard also because, like I said, I like to think big. I think in lots of different pieces. And it all makes sense to me, not always to other people. So I boil it down as much as I could. And I have a few here, some on hand that I want to show you, and then just a few titles that I will mention to you. I will say this too. Several years ago, I was presented the opportunity to sell all of my belongings and hit the road and start house sitting. And so I did that for about a year to year and a half. And the only things I feel nostalgic or emotional about letting go of are my books. And I didn't get rid of all of them. I kept some. And some that I got rid of, I replaced, but not close to what I had. And I tend to get a little emotional about it because it feels like a loss to me. So with that said, here are some books that I find valuable. So I know for a lot of writers, we tend to be very right-brained and we like the creating part, even though it might be challenging at times. And we don't think about the business part of it. But what I have learned is that if we are really going to use our stories to create change, because I do believe they do that, we have to get them out into the world, right? And I'm as guilty of this as the next person. I have no problem getting words on the page. I don't experience writer's block, but I've not been a person to send my work out regularly. And so I've been published sporadically over, many, many years. So one of my newer finds that I really enjoy and I highly recommend is this book. It's The Business of Being a Writer by Jane Friedman. She also has a fabulous blog, and I'm on her newsletter, and I always enjoy getting that in my inbox. So she knows everything, I swear, about publishing. And so I highly, highly recommend this book. And another book that I enjoy is this one called Why I Write. It's edited by Will Blythe, and it's full of essays by well-known writers just talking about their craft. And as a writer, I find this very useful, just to know how other people, especially well-known writers, think about the writing process and writing craft. Because oftentimes we can get caught in this thing, right? And think about that people who are widely published, that it's just easier to them. And that isn't the case. And so it's really helpful for me to kind of understand what's going on inside the heads of other people. This is another one similar on being a writer. I've had this one for years. This is one I actually hung on to when I sold all my things. And again, it's more like an interview format of very, very well-known writers. And I got this book when I first started writing, and it was invaluable to me to start to help me start to think about how to frame writing and how to see myself as a writer. And then this little gem, I love this book. It's called The Mindful Writer, and it's by Dinty Moore. And so what he does in it is he takes a quote, and then following it is like a little meditation on that quote, and it's all about writing. And it's just a really nice little book to read, just for enjoyment and just kind of let the messages wash over you. I love this book. I go back to it. And sort of in the same realm, I love this book, Zen in the Art of Writing by Ray Bradbury. And so these are essays by him about his writing process over the course of his life. Really, really great stuff in this. This also is a good one. I hung on to this when I got rid of my books. It's The Art of Fiction, Notes on Craft, to young writers. So I don't care if you're young or old, new or seasoned. I think this is a fabulous book for fiction writers. And he was a mentor and friend of one of my idols, Raymond Carver. And so I really adore this book. And it has so much good information in it. And inspiration as well. And then this book. I know Stephen King is, very mainstream and people have opinions about that. I happen to admire anyone who can create a writing life like he has. And this book is called On Writing, a memoir of the craft. And so it's him writing about his experience as a writer, but it's packed full of practical advice for writers. So I highly recommend it. And then this book, again, kind of looping back around to the business of writing, this book called Real Artists Don't Starve, Timeless Strategies for Thinking in the New Creative Age. It's by Jeff Goins. He debunks the starving artist myth in this book, and I think that is something that all creatives need because my culture, anyway, where I live, we tend to glamorize the starving artist. And it's really unfortunate because when we really have a yearning to become a writer or an artist, we want to embody that, right? And so we kind of go to the cultural narratives that we've been taught. And in most cases, that is the starving artist. And I don't know about you, but I don't think there's any shame in wanting to make a really good living doing what we love. So I highly recommend that book. And then the last few I have that I don't have the copies of anymore. One is Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. And it's a fabulous book about writing. She encourages us to write from our personal experience. And it's very funny. If you don't know her work, check her out. She's a very funny writer. So not only will you learn and be encouraged to write, it'll make you laugh. And then another one from my early writing days that I absolutely loved was The Writing Life by Annie Dillard. And in that book, she talked about her life. And when I was first wanting to write, it really helped me envision what my own writing life might look like. And two more. Another fabulous book is War of Art. And the subtitle, it's a long one. It says, Break Through Blocks and Win Your Inner Creative Battles. All right? So if you've been writing any length of time at all, you know some of the internal struggles that can come along with it. And this is a fabulous book to help us look at that and kind of unravel those. And then my last recommendation is Writer's Market. So when I first started writing, we didn't have the digital version of it, and so it was this big fat volume, right? And what Writer's Market is, if you don't know, it's a publication that it's a resource to show writers places they can submit their work to be published. There's the main Writer's Market, and then there's also one specific to children's books. There's one specific to periodicals, fiction, nonfiction, and so on. So I highly recommend you get that. I used to just really enjoy opening that up and looking through it because even in doing that, it gave me ideas about where I might submit work and it gave me ideas for pieces that I might write. All right? So I know that was a long list, but I hope it's helpful. I really had a hard time deciding. And I hope that helps you. I wish you all the best in your writing endeavors. And I send you mad writing mojo. Happy writing.
Thank you very much for being here and have a good day. And to everyone watching, thank you very much. I hope you find what you're looking for.
Disinformation is spreading alongside the new coronavirus. To counter this, it is important to share information that comes from reliable sources, such as health authorities and the World Health Organization. During the COVID-19 outbreak, only trust official information sources and credible media outlets. Do not share unverified information. This is a message from UNESCO.